Mi- Mixed martial arts. How do we like our martial arts? With breakfast!
Just an admirable job right there from the great Jed Meshew. He is no Casey Leiden, but the real question is, who is, right? Casey on a well-deserved vacation. He is not here, but we roll through with our UFC Saudi Arabia preview show live here on the MMA Fighting YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for listening after the fact, if that's what you're doing right now on the podcast network or the replay here on YouTube. I am Mike Heck, and joining me to preview tomorrow morning's card here on the East Coast is the Baron of Boop, Mr. No Gray Area, the hot take kid himself. Where is he? He's dancing. He's singing. He's Jed Meshew. There he is. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing terrific. It was so liberating to get to play Casey for just a day. You know, I could never be Casey. I'm not Mr. 3024, Mr. No Sleeves, No Mercy. I am not the baddest stash nor the best producer in the game, but it was nice to cosplay as him for even for a moment. So I thank you for that. I am now much more energized, frankly, than I was mere moments ago, because I just got to yell, which is always, that'll get you up and ready to talk some fights, Mike.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the process here, was to make sure your energy levels were up, to get you ready, because for the first time in 2025, we get some early morning MMA. This doesn't happen that often. It only happens a couple of times a year, and we're getting a 9 a.m. Eastern prelim. We're getting a noon Eastern main card, and top to bottom, pretty damn good card, Jed. I see the 5.5 written on the whiteboard. Explain your work here.
This is a great card. So, you know, people who are aware of the fights above replacement tussle system, they know that this maybe isn't the highest fart score that a card can get, but you do also have to factor in just the volume, because this is a 5.5 for 11 fights. That is a 50% fight above replacement level. That is a very, very good score for this. We've come to kind of expect sort of higher fart scores for road shows. Certainly the Apex is really where this system was designed to thrive. Once we get on the road, and certainly when they are going to a location like Saudi Arabia, who is demanding of them a higher class of fight, I think we can expect something better, but they delivered. And Mike, we've sort of talked about it on and off air this week already. It, you know, for the pay-per-views have their own scoring system. If the pay-per-view next week was subject to the same scoring rigors as this Saudi card, I got to tell you, I don't think it's doing 5.5. So terrific effort this weekend. And it's early morning. You get to, you know, if you're East Coaster, you get to wake up, you get to have breakfast and watch some fights. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yes, and there's so much going on in the combat sports world tomorrow as well, because we got good boxing event, which we'll be covering. BKFC's at Mohegan Sun. Parker Porter's making his BKFC debut. We got the Royal Rumble. I mean, it's just going to be a terrific day all around. But before any of those other things can happen, Israel Adesanya is returning to the octagon, and he's fighting in a non-title fight, Jed. It's been a long-ass time since that sentence has come out of anybody's mouth. Now he is fighting Nassourdine Imavov, which I think kind of took people a little bit by surprise. It makes sense, right? When you have a past champion and you want to test to see where he's at, you throw him in with a surging guy like Nassourdine Imavov. But if you were kind of looking at the options ahead of Israel Adesanya, I think from typical UFC standards, they might go a different route, someone they're trying to really put over as a star. I don't know if Nassourdine Imavov checks off all of those boxes, but he is definitely an intriguing guy moving up these ranks. What's your excitement levels? What's your intrigue levels at for this fight between Israel Adesanya and Nassourdine Imavov?
My intrigue levels have risen up this week, Mike, because like you are right. This is not the flashiest name that could happen for Israel Adesanya, but this is the fight that we would want, like that I am always calling for, and that, you know, other people want. This is the meritocratic fight. Like this is the fight that is supposed to happen. Because not everything, sometimes we want this to be a sport. We want people who deserve their opportunities to get the opportunities that they deserve. And Imavov is on a good run. He has wins over multiple top 10 dudes. He is looking at him number 5 in the UFC rankings right now. Like, he deserves an opportunity to cement himself for a title shot. And this could have gone something different because, like you said, he is not the biggest name. Like, they could have said, okay, well, let's spin your wheels. Izzy could have just said no. And I don't think many people would have faulted him for that, frankly, if he was just like, hey, I'm not going to fight that dude. I gain nothing from that fight. So we are getting the fight that makes sense as far as divisional health and moving things along in an appropriate way. And I've just become more interested in this fight from the nuts and bolts aspects to it. Like, I've thought Israel Adesanya was falling off for a couple of years now. I still think that that is true. He looked really good against Dricus du Plessis until the fight just sort of suddenly ended. But also, DDP is sort of a style that is kind of meant to make Izzy look good until he doesn't. Imavov is still young, has been steadily improving, though he's been in the promotion for several years at this point. Like, I'm really fascinated to see how this goes. Is this the full-on Israel Adesanya, the guard has changed? You know, he does not have top 10 fights in him anymore. He is in the Anderson Silva late game stage of his career, or does he still have enough juice left to kind of repel Nassourdine Imavov and hang around and hope something breaks right for him in the title fight next week or with Khamzat Chimaev, and maybe he can get one last crack at the belt?
Yeah, it is. It is an intriguing matchup, and Izzy seems to be very, very calm about the situation. He doesn't. People are gonna continue to ask about his legacy, and I think this happens a lot with former champions' careers when they start to go on the schneid a little bit. Does this affect your legacy? What does this mean if you win? What are you fighting for? Like, all those questions that we typically ask. And Adesanya is basically just like, look, man, I'm not looking past this guy. I got a really tough opponent. I need to focus on him first. But he's also said things like, look, man, I could lose the next 10 fights and it's not going to affect my legacy at all. Do you agree with that? If he loses to Imavov and he's now lost 3 straight and 4 out of his last 5, do you think his legacy takes a little bit of a hit, at least? Just a little?
I don't think losing this fight makes the legacy take like a monster hit. Izzy is one of the 20 best fighters in the history of mixed martial arts at this point in time. And that's how he should stay. But I also just have been around the sport long enough to know, like, when we talk about GOATs, Anderson Silva is often is starting to be left out of that conversation. Fedor, if you had told anybody who was a deep-seated MMA fan like 15 years ago, or that BJ Penn would just not even be remotely in the conversation as one of the greatest fighters ever, they would have laughed in your face. But he lost like 9 fights in a row, and everyone's like, yeah, he wasn't that good, which is ridiculous because the peak of his career is as good as probably anybody has ever had. But if you stick around, and even if you're just sticking around to have fun because you like it and you know you're not going to be the GOAT anymore, you know you're not going to win a belt, you're just Andrei Arlovskying this. You are picking up a paycheck, doing a job that you are good enough at and enjoy and know how to do, your legacy will inevitably take a tumble. So I don't think that, but it is one of those things where there's not really like a, here is the break point. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. It just, an accumulation of it ends up happening, and suddenly the legacy is not what it once was. It will definitely hurt his stock if he loses this weekend as far as who he fights next and sort of how we view him. I think if he loses to Imavov and then retires, it would not be a major change to his overall greatest of all time placement.
Do you think he would retire if he loses?
Based on the way he is speaking, it does not seem likely. It seems that I'm not saying he should, like, he is still competent. Losing to the number 5 guy in the division, losing all of his losses, they've come to champions. They came to Alex Pereira, Dricus du Plessis, Sean Strickland, Imavov. Like, there's no shame in losing those fights, but it then does mark where your career is at now. Previously, Imavov, he would have dusted up Imavov a few years ago. It should have been a very clean, easy win for him a few years ago. If he can't win this now, okay, maybe we need to do the Legends Tour. Maybe he tries to go to light heavyweight and, get a final act there, or we just have some fun matchups with him however they sort of fall, and he can spend as much time as he wants doing that, because this is not a Tony Ferguson situation of, dude, you gotta retire. This is getting bad. And unless it's bad, unless Imavov just puts the hammer to him, then no, he can stick around. But I think he will. He does not seem at all inclined to walk away right now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. What's the biggest question you have about this fight? Because to me, the biggest question is, it's a lot of what you said earlier in regards to the breakdown of the fight, but I wonder what Imavov's going to look like down the stretch, second half of this fight. Because Izzy has been in this situation a bazillion times. He knows what he needs to do to win a 5-round fight, and he's fought all these different styles and all these different guys. DDP, obviously a different animal. The dude looks like he's tired, but he just isn't. He's, as I said, the Kevin Youkilis of mixed martial arts. He does everything technically and from a pundit's perspective wrong, but it's so effective that it just works so incredibly well. And Izzy, it's such a great fight. I went back and rewatched that one. It's so much better the second view, because I think people forget how close it was and how good Izzy actually looked until he got at the end of that fight. Does Imavov need to do the exact same thing here? And if so, can he do this into the championship rounds? Because I don't know if he can.
He's had some questionable cardio at various points. My biggest question is strictly, how much does Izzy have left in the tank? Because I thought for a while he's probably dropping off. The back end of his title reign, I felt that he was getting there. He was starting. Because one of the first things you see when a fighter starts to decline is an unwillingness to pull the trigger. Anderson Silva was this way. Anderson Silva probably was not at his peak for like the last 2 years of his title reign. You would because you would see they are not thinking as fast as they once were. They can't make their body work as quickly as it used to. And so where they would previously take more opportunities, they would see more openings and attack more frequently. They start to really let the perfect be the enemy of the good, really recede into defensive strategies and stuff. And that's really, broadly speaking, a trend across MMA fighters and great MMA fighters who can prolong their career. Saw it with Jose Aldo. Like these are things that happen. I thought we had started to see that with Izzy the last couple of fights of his. It was really, he was not willing to open up at all and risk anything if he could just stay in third gear and kind of eke his nose past everybody. And then he loses the belt to Pereira. And then the Strickland fight was the one where it was like, what's happening here? It was so beyond the pale to imagine what occurred. And you could convince me that he just never recovered from getting dropped in the first round. I just had no idea what to expect, and I thought maybe he's coming for a sharp fall off until the DDP fight. And he looked really good until he lost. But it's DDP, it's the champion. He's my big violent man. So it's fine. I want to see what he's got left in the tank against a guy who is not as physically imposing as some of the individuals he has fought, who is not as liable to present a serious and immediate threat. See if he can open up with his offense and not just play the I'm going to try and Matador for 25 minutes game. Because if so, I think he should win. And if not, this fight gets really, really close very quickly. And so I have some of the same questions you do about Imavov in the later rounds. But my biggest question is just how much does Izzy have left? They're talking like he is a man reborn. I tend to never believe that, because that always feels like wishful thinking, or wish casting, but maybe. And so I just want to see how good is he still, and how much can I expect from this final act of his career?
Yeah, I think we've learned about the reborn and conversations with certain fight. Tony Ferguson especially, it seemed like every one of his losses was like, oh, I went back to my old team and now I feel better than ever. I'm reinvigorated.
Tyron Woodley did that for the last 6 fights where he lost every one of them.
Yeah, it was all different. I'm angry. I'm this, I'm that. So we need to actually see it play out at this point. And according to the betting lines, our friends at FanDuel, Israel Adesanya, the favorite, -160. This line has kind of gone up and down over the last few days, but it sits currently at -160. The comeback on Nassourdine Imavov is +130. And I think if the line was a little juicier, I actually think this line should be a little bigger. I know we don't control that. The betting community kind of controls that. I could see Izzy, just looking at this fight on paper, being like a -200 a little heftier slightly, but minus 160 to me, and you're more of the gambling pundit than I, seems like kind of a steal. Like it seems like there's a lot of value there, but maybe I'm wrong about that. What are your thoughts on the betting line, and overall, what is your prediction for this fight?
Um, the betting line actually feels about right to me. Minus 160 is like a 60% win probability based like odds implied. So, and that's kind of what I think this is, mainly because if you told me I was getting something close to peak Izzy, I would think that this number should be higher. But because I don't, like, I just have no idea what to expect. There is a world where Imavov just kind of pressure boxes him in a way that Sean Strickland did, outworks him early, and maybe even mixes in some takedowns late, i.e., the Jan Blachowicz game plan. And Izzy's just falling off. He doesn't have it. He can't pull the trigger. And he never was like the most predatory offensive fighter anyway. Whereas with Anderson Silva, at least as his career started to fall, he started to drop off in his ability level. He still was a violent dude who, even if maybe he didn't have his fastball anymore, his changeup could still get you out of there and change the dynamics of the fight extremely quickly. Izzy has never been quite that same sort of instantaneous momentum changer, except for that one time where Rob just ran headlong into every punch that he possibly could over and over again. So Imavov has tools and ability to do this and is getting better. I think 60-40 is about exactly how I'd split this, with a slight favor to Adesanya. But I do have a bet on him at minus 150. So, I think he's going to do it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat right now. I do think Imavov can have a lot of success early in this fight. I think his best chance to win, I don't think he wins a 5-round decision against Izzy. I just don't see it until I actually see it play out and see him go 5 consistent rounds and win one of the latter rounds. Like if he goes out in round 4 and thumps Izzy up, then I'm gonna be like, oh shit, that's pretty impressive. But the way I see this is the longer this fight goes, the more it favors Israel Adesanya. And yes, he has been dropped. Yes, he was stopped by DDP. Yes, he was stopped by Alex Pereira. Kind of a questionable stoppage in a lot of people's eyes, but typically a very durable fighter. And Imavov does have the ability to get guys out of there. He is a hoss in his own right, and he is getting better with each fight. So I think Imavov's got to get it done early. Otherwise, I think Izzy cruises and gets a decision.
I think that's probably the most likely. You do bring up a point that I think is really salient, because Israel Adesanya has been very durable for his entire combat sports career, like into his kickboxing. He has been hurt in his back 4 fights. Like his 4 most recent fights, Alex Pereira finished him, questionable or no. I don't think it was questionable, but he finished him. Alex Pereira had him hurt until Izzy killed him, which was, the KO of the year, an incredible moment. Sean Strickland drops him in the first round. This is Sean Strickland, by the way, who dropped him. Like, Sean Strickland doesn't do that. And then DDP sort of suddenly just had him on skates and then tapped him instantaneously. That is concerning, because durability is a thing that goes. Like that and the inability to pull the trigger are the 2 biggest hallmarks of somebody falling off. And when that starts to fall off, it falls off quick usually. So I don't think Imavov's going to come out and get him, but if you told me someone finished this fight, it is Imavov is the one who finished this fight.
I completely agree with that. So that's going to be a fun main event. But the fight that has sort of taken over the quote unquote people's main event spot is the co-main event. It seems like there's more attention, more eyes, more interest in the co-main event between Shara Bullet and Michael Venom Page, MVP, taking place at middleweight. Both guys made weight. Both guys had a pretty fun and intense stare down. Have you noticed that as well? Do you feel like more attention has been put on the co-main event than the actual main event itself?
Yeah, because it's 2 people that people are interested in. And I respect Nassourdine Imavov as a fighter. Shout out to Casey, who believes he is going to be fighter of the year. And if he wins this, could be on his way. Nobody cares about him. There's not an interest piece to this. And so it's Izzy, who his popularity has waned a lot in recent years in general. Because it's just been kind of off-putting, and losing a lot. Those two things aren't a great combination for popularity. And Imavov, who's a guy nobody cares about. Whereas MVP has always been an engaging personality that people are interested in. And Shara Bullet, from literally the day he joined the UFC, being the last pirate, people gravitate to him. He has some of the it factor. And so this is a matchup between two people who are not. I actually think we established that Shara Bullet is like top 15 middleweight, but they're not top 10 guys. They're not really in the immediate title picture, but they are people care about. Like, they are interesting figures in a unique and one of those matchups that you've never once thought about until it gets booked. And then you think, okay, that's kind of fun. So yes, I think this is the people's main event for sure this weekend.
It's such an interesting fight because when MVP called him out after, like, when he joined me to preview the Carlos Condit grappling match, I was like, that makes no sense. But at the same token, like, it's a great fight. And then once Jose posted the graphic and everything, it was almost unanimous that people were like, ooh, I didn't think about that, but that is terrific. And to hear just both guys just kind of have fun with each other, it's been a very respectful build. Like, MVP wants to fight him, one, to challenge himself. He wants to be active this year. Two, him and Izzy are very, very close, so he kind of intercepted the call out, which I thought was kind of cool. And then Shara's just like, I don't really know who he is as a fighter just yet. Like, I know he's fun and he's got the pirate gimmick and he's got the eye and all these things, and it is very hard to look good against a guy like MVP. So I have no idea what this fight's going to look like. And I think that's what makes this so much more interesting than the main event, because I think I know what the main event's going to look like. But when I look at this fight, I have no friggin' idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a tough one just because MVP is so weird. Like, MVP, this will be interesting because this is a dude who matches MVP's physicality. Like, he is just, like you saw at the face off or the stare down, like they are equals in size. Shara Bullet is even, honestly, maybe a little bit bigger than MVP lengthwise as well. And so his like traditional hop-in karate thing in and out, that works really well when he has enormous physical advantages over other welterweights. I have no concept of how well that might work against a hard-hitting dude who is equally sized and skilled at him. So it's really hard to just gauge on what goes. My gut tells me that this is going to be bad for MVP because of the size he is giving up, because of the power advantage that is very obviously in Shara Bullet's favor. And so if he does win, I'll be incredibly impressed. But I just, it's hard for me to believe that his particular brand of leaping in and out and timing, maybe the speed is just such an advantage for him over Shara that he can have a lot of success. But Shara Bullet he is turning into a good fighter. I don't think he's a great fighter, but I do think he's like a legitimate top 20 middleweight and has the ability to find a way to land devastating shots in small moments, and which I think could be really troublesome for a guy like MVP.
Yeah, the face-off was pretty fun. They were like equal height. They were like nose to nose when standing next to each other, but you could tell like Shara's just like a thicker, hossier looking guy.
Shara can't make 170.
Guy, yeah. Yeah, that's 100%. 100%. True or false? A takedown attempt occurs in this fight.
True.
Who's it coming from?
I think it's definitely from Shara. I think it would be smart too. Like it is fun to give the people what they want and to give them a striking battle because that's what people are expecting. And I don't think that he is going to have a wrestling heavy game plan, but Shara Magomedov can in fact grapple to some extent. And I think it's just a good thing to mix it up, not to certainly if he's getting his ass beat on the feet, then definitely go for it. But even assuming you're doing well on the feet, it is always good to give an extra layer, make somebody think about it, because if you can create the threat of a takedown on MVP, that then slows him down even further. And if he is expected, like I expect him to have a slight speed advantage, slowing him down is obviously enormously influential to the outcome of this fight. So I think I would say over 1.5. I think we'll get 2 takedown attempts at least from Shara.
Interesting. Okay. I kind of feel like MVP is going to be the one going for a takedown here.
Really
I don't know
funny.
Why. Yeah. He is. That Condit grappling match impressed
He did it to Paul Daly.
He sure did. You never know.
He was D1 MVP against Paul Daly.
Yeah, at the iconic Mohegan Sun Arena in Uncasville, Connecticut, where D1
Scenic.
hopefuls come.
Sorry, I'm sorry,
Scenic,
scenic Uncasville.
scenic. That's right. The site of BKFC tomorrow. Let's take a look at the betting odds here. Shara Bullet minus 205. The comeback on Michael Page plus 164. I'm not going to bet on any of these fights, but I would absolutely bet on Michael Page here at plus 165.
Money has come in on Shara. Shara was as low as like minus 160 earlier this week. So money has sort of steadily come in on him. I have a bet on Shara. I wouldn't bet on him now. I would not bet on him at 2-1 odds. Actually, even worse than 2-1 odds. But yeah, like I said, I think MVP is probably not at his best. He is older. He is coming up in weight. Maybe moving up in weight helps the kind of slowing down, getting older part of his game. But I'm just defaulting to the bigger guy is probably going to win this fight. Like I said, I'll be really impressed if MVP does. And if he does, especially if he wins and wins impressively, then I'm pretty interested in seeing what he can do at middleweight. There are certain guys at middleweight who would absolutely throttle him, like Fluffy Hernandez should not be anywhere remotely near MVP. But like you told me MVP and Jared Cannonier fight, if MVP just comes out like beats Shara convincingly tomorrow, I'd be pretty down to watch Jared Cannonier and MVP get after it.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I think the pick is Shara, but I don't know if it's going to be exactly like this, but this has Zabit Calvin Kattar vibes to it to some degree, where I think Shara wins like the first 2 rounds and then like MVP starts to get momentum at the end of the second and then cruises in the third. And it's one of those ones like, man, if this is 5 rounds, like I think MVP wins. It's going to be kind of one of those feelings, but it's a tough one to call. Like I said, if this is if I was forced to bet on this fight, I would bet on MVP at those odds, but I honestly just, again, don't know what this is going to actually look like. So it's going to be a very interesting fight. And the experience is certainly going to play a factor in this one. I just don't know how much Shara's overall size and weight discrepancy, because there's going to be one in this fight. Like I think Shara come fight night, come tomorrow morning, will be like 20 pounds heavier than he weighed in. How much of a difference is that going to make in the proceedings, especially those clinch battles against the fence, which MVP is actually really good at in these types of scenarios. So we shall see. We got Sergey Pavlovich versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Seems like a under 2.5 if there ever was one. We got Said Nurmagomedov versus Vinicius Oliveira. We get Fares Zayem versus Mike Davis. That is the main card, and it's a darn good one, Jed. Not too shabby, but low-key banger for you. What's the most interesting fight on this card that we have not discussed, or even maybe one of the ones we just ran off but haven't taken a deep dive into?
So I can't call it a low-key banger, so I'm going to give you 2. Because the low-key banger is, well, justifiably the low-key banger would be Fares Zayem versus Mike Davis. We talked about that a lot yesterday on BTL, because nobody is talking about this fight, and it's probably the second best fight on the card. Like it is a very, very good matchup. So that is definitionally that. I will also say Terrence McKinney versus Damir Hadzovic is going to be a banger, and nobody is really talking about that. But Terrence McKinney only fights for 7 minutes or less. It's just the only thing he does. So make sure you set your alarm clock to be up before 10 a.m. tomorrow, because that thing is going to be fun for however long or short it lasts. But the fight I want to talk about is, I think you're going to understand this. I want to talk about the heavyweights, Mike. I want to talk about Sergey Pavlovich taking on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Not just because Sergey Pavlovich is on my fantasy team. Not just because Sergey Pavlovich is my member of the climb. Because I'm genuinely fascinated by how this fight plays out this week, because a year and a half ago, Sergey Pavlovich was young Francis Ngannou. He was oh, look at this dude. He has the dim mock death touch. He is killing people in 60 seconds. He is this gigantic, hulking, imposing figure at heavyweight at a time when this division needs somebody interesting and kind of scary. Like he is Rocky IV Russian experiment shit staring us down, and nobody can stand toe to toe with him for even a moment. And then he steps in on short notice against Tom Aspinall and gets run right the fuck over. And you're like, okay, Tom Aspinall is amazing. So no harm, no foul there, right? Like, it's Tom Aspinall. He is maybe the greatest talent we've seen at heavyweight. Certainly the best talent we've seen at heavyweight probably since Cain Velasquez, right? No shame in that. The Alexander Volkov fight, that's the fight he is supposed to then rebound with. And I have a ton of respect for Volkov. I actually picked and bet Volkov in that fight and what Volkov's continued career improvement. But losing that fight, suddenly this undefeatable monster is now on a 2-fight losing streak. And he is getting a matchup that he is a large favorite in, but the stakes are pretty critical for him. If he loses to Jairzinho Rozenstruik on Saturday, that's ball game for his career. He'll hang around, he'll do some stuff, but I mean, that's it. He's not fighting for a belt at this one. And because suddenly he is just in career free fall, and you don't recover from those almost ever. Jairzinho Rozenstruik on the other side of the table has hung around, had his initial win streak, was maybe a guy to be excited about, and then Francis Ngannou killed him, and he's sort of won one, lost one, and just been a dude. But because Pavlovich is still so highly ranked, this could be a win that suddenly gets Jairzinho Rozenstruik like right in the mix. And maybe he's one, like a win on Saturday puts him probably one win away from challenging Tom Aspinall for the heavyweight belt. So the stakes here are pretty enormous. And because we've seen really so little of Sergey Pavlovich outside of him killing people and then losing, I'm pretty interested to see how he looks on Saturday. If he can just kill him, then this won't be interesting. But if this has to be more of a fight, more of a battle, I really want to see what Pavlovich can bring to the table.
It's an interesting fight, and it could be one of those fights that ends in 35 seconds, or we could see the Jairzinho that fought. And I know we're comparing Shamil Gadzhiev to Sergey Pavlovich is a little ridiculous, but we saw a much different, more calculated, more patient Jairzinho Rozenstruik in that fight. He just kind of waited for Shamil to tire himself out. He was jabbing, he was moving around a lot more. And I don't know if he does that, if he implements that same sort of strategy against a guy like Pavlovich, he could find success, or Pavlovich will eventually just land a big shot and knock him out. But it is interesting, and I think you make a great point. Sergey Pavlovich might have the most to lose on this entire card, and that includes Israel Adesanya.
I think that this will be a devastating loss to his career, and conversely, this would be the biggest win of Jairzinho Rozenstruik's career. Like, this is, to me, outside of maybe the main event, and I'm not even sure, like, Nassourdine Imavov has the most to gain this weekend. I think that is undeniable. To me, the fight with both sides have the most obvious stakes is the feature bout, because the delta between a loss for Pavlovich and a win for Rozenstruik is so large that there's a lot going on in this fight that matters.
It's going to be a fun card. Again, just 11 fights. The early start time puts it over just a little bit more. Very, very excited.
Buddy, I'm not even working in the morning. So I get to wake up, go for a little bit of a run in the morning, come home.
There you go.
And I'm going to cook myself a big fancy breakfast with all the eatings and settle in. I'm not going to lie to you people. I'm probably not going to settle in for the Hamdi versus Jamal Pogues fight. Probably not going to settle in for Bogdangrad versus Lucas Alexander. Those are just horrifically bad fights. But my intent tomorrow, Mike, is to have the bacon in the oven, ready to go, and then settle in right around the time that Jasmine Jasudavicius and my boy Silva get in there and get after it.
Yes, someone was asking the betting favorite for that fight. Sergey Pavlovich, massive favorite, -320. Comeback on Jairzinho is +245. So perhaps a little bit of value on Jairzinho. If you expect this fight to be hammer and tongs, swing until somebody falls, this is heavyweight MMA. But yeah, I feel like this could be a tailor-made win for Sergey Pavlovich, but Jairzinho's been in there with some really good fighters, man. He's been in there with some good guys. So we shall see how this plays out. And you mentioned something that, because we're going to go to the peeps, we're going to go to questions here. Of course, the super chatters, you get the velvet rope removed. You just walk right in. Everyone's waiting in line. You just shoot right past them. You
Dude,
give them a look.
this is how you learn things, guys. If you know, I know that not all of you are as worldly as me and Mike, but you're heading to the club, you're heading to the fancy restaurant. You gotta go up to the maitre d and be like, "How long's the wait?" You just give him the cool little handshake with the 20 slipped in the fingers, and he's like, "There's no wait for you. We have a table right around the way." That's the super chat. Sometimes you gotta grease the wheels a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
You mentioned one fight in particular, and this seems to be a popular one. We get a couple questions about this. Jen and Mike, can we talk about the Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Mayra Bueno Silva fight? Quite an interesting one to see where they're at. Jasmine has been quite impressive, I think, and Mayra is stepping down a little bit. Interesting matchup. I had some people DM me about the betting lines here, and again, you're the guy to ask here. Is there significant betting value on Mayra Bueno Silva right now? Because right now, Jasmine Jasudavicius is a minus 260 favorite. And the comeback on Mayra Bueno Silva, who most of us had pegged to be the bantamweight champion at the end of 2024. She was the favorite to beat Raquel Pennington a year ago to become the women's bantamweight champion when that title was vacated. She's plus 215 right now. Is there value on Mayra Bueno Silva in your opinion, or do you feel like she is just on a significant downslide, which is why she's moving back to 125?
My head tells me there's value on her. My gut says stay the F away. Very honestly, this is because minus 260 is like a 75%, not quite, but like 73 or something win probability implied there. In my head, it's exactly as you broke it down. I said that on No Bets Barred this week. I was like, it is hard for me to imagine this position last year. Because at this time last year, I guess maybe a week or two before this time last year, Mayra Bueno Silva was I won't say overwhelming, but the whelmingly favorite fighter to be the women's bantamweight champion by the end of the year. She was the person we were all pinning our hopes on to be somebody who was interesting at bantamweight. And then Rocky Pennington came and just sort of taught her how to fight over 25 minutes. And then the Mason Chasen, arrived or whatever. And now she is doing this. So it is hard to imagine like a year ago thinking that she was the future and now being like, actually, I don't even think she's going to be Jasmine Jasudavicius. Like that's a precipitous fall, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense. She hasn't looked particularly great lately. She never looked great at flyweight either. Some of her success at bantamweight can be ascribed to bantamweight is garbage. And she was fighting old, bad fighters in a garbage weight class. And so she was able to be dynamic enough to be interesting. Not quite the same at flyweight. I think that there is still value because she, like, Davis is actually not giving up any size, despite the fact that Mayra Bueno Silva is dropping back down. But maybe giving up a little bit of physicality here. MBS can grapple, is dynamic threat. And JJ has, let me look up Jasudavicius' recent wins, because I remember thinking that these were like, and exactly, her wins are Priscilla Cachoeira, Fatima Klein, and Ariana De Silva. Like, that's not exactly a murderer's row of people to be really, really pumped about. So I think that there is value on it. At the same time, I don't feel that confident in just placing my money behind MBS given her current form.
Yeah, look, the fantasy squad selfishly needs a win here, and we need a ranked win, and we need a great performance behind it. And I do have Jasmine as my women's flyweight. I think this is kind of the spot I needed to take here to try to make a move. And boy, after what happened with Peyton Talbot, I kind of need her to win. Like, I can get some points back with this one if she can go out and finish. The way I see this fight is
you had a tough 311. You had a tough 311 with Talbot getting upset and Sarukian not fighting.
Golly, man. I've had terrible luck thus far.
It's very difficult.
But I feel pretty good about it because I think MBS has to just run over Jasmine quickly to win. Because I think if this goes to round 2, I think Jasmine just does Jasmine things. She just gets better.
Take her down and control her.
Yeah, she's just gonna
maybe even tap her.
Yeah, she's just gonna wear her down. The good old damage bar is just gonna continue to lower and lower, and Jasmine just keeps going, and she can just maul you. And I think that weight cut, even though Myra did make weight, and that's great. It is very loud outside. That weight cut's gotta play a factor in this fight, I think. So we'll see how it all plays out. It's a great early prelim, and we're looking forward to that. Joseph asks, could the winner of Pavlovich Rosenstrike get into the title hunt, or is this a fight to stay relevant at heavyweight, considering we don't know when or if John versus Tommy Aspinall happens? What's at stake for these two gentlemen in the heavyweight division on the main card?
Pavlovich needs this to stay in the title hunt. He is almost definitionally in the title hunt by being the number 4 ranked heavyweight in the UFC at this point. And number 4 is, I mean, truly number 4 because they have John as the champion or whatever. So there are 5 dudes in front of him, but John is not. Like he is the number 4 dude in the weight class. For Rosenstrike, he is currently number 9. So a win here immediately puts him in title contention, right? Like immediately, because I think the expectation for most people, some people believe that John and Tom will fight. I am just not one of those. The expectation is that Cyril Gane may fight Tom Aspinall at some point, because I know that we don't think most people agree, probably did not deserve to beat Alexander Volkov, but he did. He got his hand raised in their rematch, and thus makes obvious sense to challenge Tom Aspinall for the belt next. And then after that, Volkov's kind of in the mix because he has the win over Pavlovich, but he is coming off the loss. If you want to treat it like it's not a loss, okay. And then heavyweight just is bereft of names that matter, that are significant, that are cool. So if Jairzinho Rosenstrike wins, he is just a new name at the top. Yes, he has lost to Volkov and Jelton Almeida and Curtis Blades, but like he is just suddenly in that mix of people. He will need one more, right? Like, but legitimately, if he wins, he'll be on a 3-fight winning streak, all against top 15 dudes, although Taito Ivasa may no longer be ranked. I'm not looking at that right now. Let me see if Taito Ivasa is still ranked. Taito Ivasa is still ranked number 11. Good gracious. I think he's lost his last 5 fights in a row. Holy shit, this is a bad weight class. He's coming off wins over Shamil Gaziev and Taito Ivasa. Like, those are meaningful wins. If he adds Sergey Pavlovich, that is appropriately moving up the ladder. And then he probably gets the rematch with Volkov. And if he wins that, suddenly he's fighting for a belt. So the winner of this will need to win one more fight, but this puts them the winner of this is in a title eliminator next, I think is what ends up happening.
Could be. Scott reminding us JD's worst loss was to Elise Reed at CFFC, but that was at 115. And if you watch that fight, Jasmine won that fight. I thought she got screwed on the cards, but that's just one man's opinion. We shall see.
I could not tell you a single thing about that fight, so I trust you.
I did. I watched that one. I've been interviewing Jasmine since she was an amateur. She's just one of those naturals who picked it up just real late in her life and just picked it up immediately. And everyone was like, oh shit, she's very good. So one of those things that we need to keep an eye on, but watching Jasmine like fight in the UFC now and getting significant wins is pretty crazy. Mike and Jed, do you think Imavov winning is better for the UFC? They have a great fan base in France, but need bigger stars. Could this be the best outcome for the UFC considering the growing market there? Do you think there's something to that this isn't like Sean O'Malley fighting Marab or anything like that, but do you think the UFC's kind of like, you know what? Kind of want to see Imavov win this one, and then we can expand our base in France a little bit more.
I think they probably honestly don't care, right? Realistically, I think long term it is better for them. I think short term it is probably better, though there is one specific scenario where it's not, because short term, one of the biggest fights that the UFC can put on at middleweight is Khamzat Chimaev versus Israel Adesanya for the title. So Chimaev is going to fight the winner. It's not set in stone, but it seems extremely likely Chimaev fights the winner of UFC 312 main event between DDP and Strickland, their rematch. If he does then claim the belt by the summer or early fall, a matchup between him and Israel is one of the biggest fights that the promotion can broadly put on, because of how much they've invested in Izzy over the years. His general stardom, even if I do think it's declining somewhat, that would be the exact sort of fight that would lift him back up. Hamzat with the belt, that would be the far bigger business than Nassourdine Imavov fighting anybody for the title. So that is a part of it. But removing that very specific scenario, for all the reasons the comment suggested, yeah, like the UFC is going to Paris about once a year at this point. There is a burgeoning MMA scene in France. I think that over the next few years, that is really a location to watch out for as far as more talent emerging from that space. Imavov is not the sort of captivating personality who is going to suddenly, oh, here is the burst forth of Irish MMA that Conor McGregor brought with him. But if you could just get a dude who's in the real picture, then they can start having a leg to stand on. They can have something to start building around and waiting for the true French superstar to arrive. So I would say that, they've squeezed a lot of juice out of Izzy promotionally already. Long term, I think it is definitely better for the 29-year-old from an emerging market to be successful than the 37-year-old who probably doesn't have that much longer left in the sport.
Yeah. Probably right. I don't know. I mean, because again, like Izzy's one of those guys who's almost like beyond rankings and titles and stuff. Like he's such a big name that it will still be relevant who he fights. All right. Like if Izzy fights anybody, it's going to be, oh shit, Izzy's fighting. Even if it's Fluffy Hernandez or Brendan Allen or somebody of that ilk or Hennier to Hitter. Maybe Hennier to Hitter gets the, or Shara Bullet, like something to that effect. So interesting times at middleweight. There's so many middleweight main events coming up. It's not even funny.
So many on the docket. And that is a good point, honestly, because even a loss with Izzy, he's still valuable as a get people over. Whereas Imavov is much less valuable in that regard. Like people beating Imavov if he loses and then fights Ryan Ritter or whatever, like that nobody cares that much. But if Izzy loses, then fights RDR and loses, like that elevates RDR in a significant way because he is a name brand. People know who he is.
Yep. Is Shara Bullet the first fighter to thank you for helping make a fight for him? Yes, I think so. That was fun. That. Yeah,
I didn't see that he thanked you, but that's terrific.
It was like the very end of our interview. He thanked me for making the fight, and I didn't make the fight. All I did was ask MVP like what he wanted, and he made the fight. There. Yeah, thank MVP. Don't thank me.
Fighters could thank you a lot more if they tuned in to listen on to the next one and then just followed what you're saying. If they listen to any of our shows beforehand, we're like, when you win, call out this person. More fighters could have career success like Shara Bullet if they just listened to the MMA Fighting Network more.
Yeah, Otno points are coming in. Chase Hooper versus Jim Miller is now on the docket. I mean, just keep them coming. Yeah, that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Mitchell dropped yet? No, he's not.
He's not getting dropped.
No, I didn't think he would. Dana just ripped him to shreds, but then ultimately said, look, you know how I feel about free speech, even though he's the dumbest person I've ever seen. So I think we could probably leave it at that unless you have more.
It was extremely disappointing.
Yeah, but not surprising.
I was a little surprised. I just really thought that this would be the line in the sand of like, hey man, because there's no such thing as a free speech absolutionist, and we don't have to dive into all of that. It's just like at some point, at a very basic level, if you are the type of company who does not punish certain behavior, you are definitionally encouraging people of that behavior to flock to you to do this. And, Bryce Mitchell one time saying this horrific thing is bad. If every other fighter just starts saying this shit, there's a line. There's a reason these lines exist. They just are moral cowards and do not want to take a stand about anything. And so it persists. I really thought that nobody would have faulted them other than literal Nazis for firing him. And who gives a fuck what a literal Nazi thinks? So I honestly thought that they would do it. They didn't. It is what it is.
Yeah, that was pretty much the exact response I thought we'd get. Actually, it was a little, I got to say, it was actually like a little more, I don't even know what word to use here. I didn't think Dana would go in as hard as he did, but he did.
That's just fucking meaningless.
Yeah.
Show me your actions, not what you say. Like that, your actions define who you are. And his actions are that it's okay to be a Nazi. That's what it is. Like, I will employ a Nazi, and tacitly I'll promote him, because his line of, the great thing about fighting is you can tune in to watch him get beat.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's the logical jump to, you're comfortable promoting Nazis if people won't like. Is really bad, man. Like, I cannot. I sent emails to a bunch of people just hoping for some sort of like adult in the room response. This is literally like a child could pass this test of, yeah, we should not associate. There's no reason to associate our brand with him. He is not the champion. It is entirely for, it just can't get it. Can't understand it. The easiest softball that has ever been lobbed up.
I mean, you wonder if it was like the 60th ranked featherweight. Would he be gone?
Honestly, that's not what I wonder. My actual wonder, and I wish somebody had asked him, I wish Dana had been asked two questions. Is there anything anybody could ever say and be like, what if they use are you going to give him a live microphone if he wins? And what if a fighter comes out and is like, hey, I believe the Ali Act should be expanded into, to cover MMA, and the UFC is a monopsony that is categorically hurting all of our lives. Like, there's no world in which he would let anyone say anything. So how is this not just the moment to be like, hey man, we're pretty loose about a lot of things. We give you a lot of rope. You can't say Hitler was a good dude. You just can't fucking do that. That nobody would have an issue with drawing the line there, except for literal Nazis. And those people can get fucked.
The whole thing is fucking ridiculous. 2025 off to what a start. Scott, thank you for the super chat. No matter if you like Jim Rome or not, have either of you ever considered trying to win his smack off? Could you at least place in the top 3 if you really tried?
I have no idea.
I can't lie to you, America, in the world. I have no idea what smack off is.
No,
I don't. I know Chael Sonnen talked about it a few times when I used to listen to his show, when it was kind of tailored a little bit differently years ago, but I really don't know what it is. So
I have to answer this, and I don't want to because I'm giving credence to fucking morons. But free speech is not about your ability to say anything and not face consequences. That is not what free speech is. Free speech is your ability to not face consequences from the government. If I say something to you, I am not immune to the responses of that. And this is private enterprise. Learn. Oh my God. I know that is just being said because it's a dipshit who doesn't know anything. This is not a free speech issue. Not it.
Okay. We'll end here. Can we get Mike and Jed's thoughts on the ultimate troll job from Logan yesterday? It was a match that was being promoted. Logan is getting reality show. I mean, this is what we expected. We knew they weren't fighting each other.
Yeah.
It went over like flatulence in church during a wedding. That's what it went over as.
Decent. I'll say decent troll job just on the initial announcement, because it did make people think, ooh, is this happening? But then almost immediately people were like, no. And then there was that report that this was a reality TV series that dropped 20 minutes after it happened. So, they got to be in the news cycle, which is what they want. This is an attention economy, and they got it. So at some level of success, but I think most people knew that this wasn't happening pretty quickly after they tried to pretend like it was.
I am told that Jake does have his next fight in, I don't know if it's fully locked down. I don't know who it is. But from what I understand, it's going to be a big one. That's what I'm told. I do not have any name or a date or anything like that. I'm told it's a big one.
I don't
And
know
that's
who
all
a
I can
big
say, I
one would
guess.
qualify as, like Tommy Fury and KSI, but Tommy Fury just doesn't seem like it would happen at this point. Tommy
It's
Fury has just butchered all of any goodwill or whatever he had. So I don't know.
he should have
I don't
just.
know I don't know what constitute a big one for Jake Paul.
I kind of feel like it has to be KSI, right?
I mean, they
Right?
need to
Like
do that at some point in
if it's a
time.
big one, I feel like that's the only big one. I don't even think Tommy's that big. Like I'd be interested in Tommy just to see him if he could actually beat him.
The thing, I
But
think Tommy's big because the storyline there. I think that's big.
because that's the only like actual. I mean, if you want to call him like a actual boxer,
And that
and he
one was
lost.
rumored to be the Netflix fight before the Mike Tyson thing ended up happening, that there was some speculation or talk that Tommy and Jake would be the first Netflix thing. Like that would be big fight. So I just don't think so because of Tommy's super weird career. Maybe, I guess maybe Darren Till. People maybe would be interested in that. I don't know
Maybe
though.
I don't know if that
But
would
that
constitute
doesn't
as like
feel
as a big
big.
one.
That feels like something they would say is big that is maybe not actually big, but like is bigger than whatever the dude he beat down in Mississippi or whatever the random boxing foray he took was.
Andre August. I was
Sure,
at
that
fight.
guy.
In beautiful Orlando, Caribe Royale. It lasted all of like 38 seconds. I also saw like maybe the worst boxing match of all time on that card. But that's just what happens sometimes when you have these prospect series events. You see some very bad boxing. So yeah, I wonder if it's KSI. I think that would kind of be the only one that would constitute as quote unquote big right now. Could it be Canelo? Who the fuck knows? I don't know.
No chance it's Canelo.
That'd be awesome if Canelo was just like, yeah, let me fight this dude. People would
It
be
would
pissed at him,
be
but it'd be huge.
the boxing world would never forgive him. It would never that they would never forgive him. And honestly, justifiably.
Yeah. What a time.
Also,
to be
it can't be
alive.
Canelo. Canelo's I don't actually know if it's set, but the Terrence Crawford Canelo thing is like the Canelo rumor. Is that happening or not?
The only thing I think is actually like real at the moment from I guess what I saw is that like a certain May 3rd was approved for like a boxing event in Vegas. So I don't know if like
I also see
they're
September
just
13th, but those are also just the Canelo fights those two dates every year, the
Yeah.
Mexican Independence Days. And then Cinco de Mayo, like he's always competing there, so wouldn't be. But if I'm Canelo, he should be fighting Terrence Crawford anyway instead of fighting Jake Paul.
Yeah. But I would love to see that fight. I hope it happens. God, I hope it happens. But Canelo likes that money, man. Jake Paul fighting Mr. T. No.
Is Mr. T alive?
That's a great. Actually, that's a really good
I'm
question. I think
Googling
he
Mr.
is.
T. Sure is. 72 years old.
Yeah.
Mr.
I think
T's
I went
only
and
5'10". Wow.
It's been
That
around a long ass time, man.
It's surprising to me that he is only 5'10".
There's people working literally outside my house. Mike, was that you at the VCU versus St. Louis basketball brawl? The dude looked just like you. Is this true?
I have no idea, but I love the idea that could have been you.
It's so funny. Shout out
Well
to
done.
Mr. T.
Whoever that was, well done. Absolutely critical piece.
Terrific. Awesome job. You guys are all the best. I think we've fulfilled our obligation here. Talking about UFC Saudi Arabia. And don't you worry, more obligations will be fulfilled tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. Get your coffee, get your bagel, get your breakfast ready to go.
Jeez.
Yeah, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time for the People's Pre-Fight Show.
Pre-fight show. Oh,
yeah, we will answer your questions. We will get you ready because at 9 a.m. Eastern, that's when the fisticuffs begin in Riyadh. And then we go all the way up till Israel Adesanya battles Nassourdine Imavov in the main event. I'll be sort of multitasking at the beginning of the card because my son is in a bowling league. So I'll be watching.
What kind of bowler is he?
He's a 10-pinner.
What's he throwing up on the scorecards?
He bowled like a 127 not that long ago.
Pretty good.
It was pretty good. It was one of those rounds where he bowled a strike like on his first frame and first box in the second frame or the second string if you will. And I was like, hey, if you get a turkey, I'll buy you Zaxby's. He fucking loves Zaxby's. I think it's the most disgusting food in the world. But
You think Zaxby's is disgusting?
Oh, it's terrible. Maybe it's just because I haven't had like the right thing.
I mean, Zaxby, I wouldn't say it's the best of the fried chicken spots, but Zaxby's slaps.
Not a fan. Maybe if
Were you Raising Cane's guy? What kind of fried chicken is your poison?
Like restaurant, I guess, like local establishment.
Yeah,
it's not the worst.
This is how I know you're not from the South.
Yeah, the best part.
How I know you're not from the South.
Oh man, but yeah,
all of our fast food is fried chicken places.
Dude, plus like a Zaxby's meal is like $16. It's crazy.
Yeah. Get a big Zax snack, baby. It's light. Just a couple tendies, Texas toast, some fries, Zax sauce. No,
where did Zaxby's emanate from? Where did the first Zaxby's come about?
No clue. Let's look it up.
Well, that'll be like watch party fodder if they end up at wherever the Big Z.
First Zaxby's? Oh, Statesboro. Hell yeah. Let's go, Georgia.
Really?
I had no idea Zaxby's started in Statesboro.
Wow. That's where the water park is too, right?
Yeah, there's like Wild Adventure there. I think that's right. Statesboro is like an hour outside of Savannah, so I have friends who lived in there.
Splash at the Borough, I think it's called.
It's also where Georgia Southern is.
Yep.
Georgia is responsible for Chick-fil-A, Zaxby's. I want to say we did Raising Cane's too, but I'm not certain. That
wouldn't surprise me.
I really wouldn't surprise me at all if Raising Cane's was us.
I mean, look, Zaxby's. My son loves his Zaxby's. It's just not my jam.
Oh no, that's Louisiana, which also makes sense actually.
Yes,
based on the name.
So there you go. So get your breakfast Zaxby's ready to go for the People's Pre-Fight Show. Whatever you'll be consuming on the early morning hours of fisticuffs, and we'll answer your questions. And then
if you're doing breakfast fried chicken, go to Bojangles. Always the best. The Bojangles, Bowberry biscuit. I might do that now because it's delicious, but it's going to be fun. We're going to have a great time tomorrow. I'm going to watch fights while not working, which is a very exciting prospect. I never get to do that. And I get to watch some boxing and I guess the Royal Rumble in the evening.
Yes.
Go, John Cena.
Still trying to figure out the watch party thing. I might do it on my personal channel. I found out I had a copyright strike for no reason. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't.
So that's what they all say, Mike.
I really didn't. I'm pissed. I'm not even going to fight it. It's a long story. I just did the copyright school and it's been withdrawn. So hopefully I can get that all squared away and we can do some sort of Royal Rumble watch along. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Friday. We'll see you tomorrow morning for UFC Saudi Arabia. For Jed, I am Mike Heck. Have a wonderful day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Love y'all. Love y'all so much. And I love that nobody asked about Connor. Y'all are kings and heroes.